Aries Girl Podcast. Welcome to the Aries Girl Podcast. I'm your host, Aries Ramsey. All commentary provided in this video is alleged, in my opinion, and for entertainment purposes only, under the guidance of the Fair Use Act of 1976. Well, now that we have that disclaimer out of the way, let's get into the show. Hello Zodiacs, we have to talk about whoever wrote Marceau's script to read to Trisha's husband Marquez, because I cannot fathom him saying that off of the top of his head. If so, the end is near. Well, I'm being a little melodramatic, but you get my drift. Episode 11 was more than just a Nell-Raiser, it also raised eyebrows, so let's get into the first scene. The episode picks back up with the Fletcher family discussing therapy. Chris Jr. is telling Nell that she needs solo therapy, and Nell is flat out refusing and telling the kids that they are the ones that need therapy, and she just needs to get out of debt. Their daughter Kayla mentions that some people just need to talk to someone because therapy is not just going when you are depressed or going through something. Lance states that they are a tight-knit family, and to have someone unbiased that can give them more tools will benefit everyone. Nell goes into confessional to question her adult children, telling her that she needs tools. She says that the therapist is for them and that she doesn't think she needs a therapist. She states that she needs for everyone to take care of themselves and be responsible for their own life. Nell just needs boundaries set, and that's what she's seeking. To me, it just sounds like she wants the therapist to set boundaries that she and Chris Sr. didn't set for the kids, and she doesn't actually think that anything else is wrong. This alone suggests that she needs therapy. In scene, their niece Kayla asks Nell if she doesn't think that she needs counseling, and Lance agrees that counseling is a better word to use instead of therapy. And to end the scene, Nell just says she'll think about it. Think long and hard, Nell, long and hard. In the second scene, we finally meet Trisha's legal husband, Marquez. He arrives at Black Cigar Lounge and greets Marceau. Poor Marquez requested an old-fashioned after Marceau asked him if he wanted anything to drink, but Marceau said that he could only have something straight or neat. Now, most people use straight and neat interchangeably, but maybe Marceau is referring to straight as the alcohol being shaken in a shaker with ice and then poured into a glass. I'm not sure, but I'm willing to bet that he just doesn't know how to make an old-fashioned. Making an old-fashioned isn't rocket science. It's just whiskey, simple syrup and bitters, then garnish with an orange peel and a cherry. I'm surprised that there wasn't a recipe cheat sheet behind the bar for him to use. Marceau needs to go to bartending school, or get from behind the bar. I'm just saying. Anyway, Marceau goes into confessional to say that he knows Marquez from when they worked together at the Monaco movie theater. Marceau claims that he received a call from Marquez recently saying that he was in town, so he told him to pull up at Black. Yeah, I'm willing to bet that production told Marceau that Marquez was coming into town and set up the meeting at Black to push along this tired storyline, but if that's the story Marceau wants to tell, we'll just roll with it. Marquez states that homecoming was the last time that he was in Huntsville, but claims that he needs to apologize to Marceau because he quote-unquote got into it with Ken. Wait, what? Why does Marceau need an apology for this? Moving on. Marquez explains that he got into it with Ken, his ex-wife's dude. Sir, you don't have an ex-wife. Trisha is your current wife until a divorce happens, so stop with this nonsense. Now, Marceau is fake surprised because he says he heard about the incident, but thought that it was somebody different, meaning other than an incident at homecoming involving Marquez and Ken. We go back into Marceau's confessional where he is less than honest by saying that he didn't know that Marquez was Trisha's husband or that Marquez was married. Luckily, production rolled prior footage of Marceau from Nell's birthday party, where he appeared to already know the entire story revolving around Ken, Trisha and Marquez. Back in scene, Marceau claims that he doesn't know what to call their situation and asks if it is a throuple. No, Marceau, a throuple is 3 people equally in a relationship, and what you allegedly do with 2 additional random women in hotels is called a ménage à trois, but I digress. Marquez says that it is more of an entanglement on Trisha's end, but Marceau corrects him by saying that it is their entanglement, and then asks if Marquez and Trisha are legally separated. Now, Marquez admits that they are legally separated, but not legally divorced. Yes, we know this Marquez, and so do you Marceau. Apparently, Marquez is coming back for his kids and for closure in the situation. Now, Marceau wants the deets on their relationship timeline, which is so nosy. Marquez breaks it down by telling Nosy Boots, I mean Marceau, that he and Trisha got married at 18 and they were high school sweethearts. He thinks that he wasn't there for her emotionally when Trisha's parents passed because he apparently didn't know how to support her in that way because no one on his side of the family had passed away before, and he realized that he didn't have empathy. As he is trying to explain in further detail, Marceau cuts Marquez off and asks him if he loved Trisha, and of course, he says that he loved Trisha, but he wasn't in love with her. And when COVID hit in 2020, Marquez realized that he didn't want to be in the situation that he was in, and that they had a lot of unresolved issues and matters that they never talked about, so he now lives in Atlanta. Am I the only person shocked that Marquez didn't blame the mellow meters for his marriage falling apart? However, Marceau needs to know why Marquez moved to Atlanta, and he says he did that to escape how he was feeling because of the situation with Ken. Apparently, Marquez couldn't handle seeing Ken around his kids. And of course, Marceau gets a dig in by saying that Marquez couldn't handle Ken being a father. Now, Marquez shows his ignorance by asking Marceau of all people, what defines a father? If you've watched the show from the beginning, you know that Marceau wouldn't watch his own children when Tisha wanted to go out and do things, so any fatherly advice coming from Marceau is rich. Nonetheless, Marceau defined a father as someone that takes the kids to school, and to dance, and acts in the capacity of a father. These are all things Marceau didn't do for his own kids. And for some reason, Marquez is asking Marceau how to get past things so that he can be a father. Marceau told him that if he left his household, he left his wife and his kids, because you can't just be a father for a period of time and then just stop, because fatherhood is something that is earned. In his confessional, Marceau says that he thinks that men have to really understand what it means to walk away from a family, because on one hand, you have love with your wife and spouse, who you thought may be forever, but at this point, you don't like her. But the question is, do you want your daughter sitting on another man's lap? And how comfortable are you with your son calling another man father? And sometimes, that outweighs love. Tisha, you do know that he's talking to you, right? And it sounds like Marceau is out of there when your youngest daughter turns 18, so get your cry angle ready. Now, Marquez thinks that Trisha still loves him, and that Ken is a rebound. Also, Marquez claims that Ken was sliding in Trisha's DMs and putting chocolate emojis on her Instagram photos 3 years before he left Trisha and the kids. He explains that Trisha was always in the gym, and he was fine with it until she left her phone at home and Marquez saw a message from Ken on her phone, so he called Ken, and Ken told him that he needed to quote-unquote check his girl. So Ken allegedly had been talking to Trisha for a while, and he thinks that Ken is the reason Trisha was always going to the gym. Marceau asked if Trisha cheated on him with Ken, and Marquez says that he can't confirm or deny it, but she was saying that Ken was her friend/homeboy, and Marquez stated that she never had male friends, so he thinks that Ken was plotting to be with Trisha. Geez, she's cheating on him now with Ken. Let's stop playing games with semantics. And Marceau, how many times have you cheated on Tisha? Marquez's main problem is Ken living in his house and his daughter acting funny towards him. Apparently she has told her dad that she hates him, and that he messed up their perfect family, which he thinks those are Trisha's words and not his daughter's. But Marceau tells him that his daughter is old enough to have those feelings and express them based on how Marquez raised her. Now, Marceau explains that it's okay for the kids to have animosity towards Marquez because he left them, and Marquez wants to know how to move forward because he has never had a conversation with Ken. Apparently, Ken has said some out-of-pocket things to Marquez, like by telling Trisha that Marquez needs to be worried about him being Zaria's daddy. Marceau goes back into confessional to say that Marquez is a bit delusional in his approach. Then, he claims that Marquez has similarities to Martel Holt, but acts passive. Next, he has the audacity to compare Ken and Trish to Martel and Mel, and he says that Marquez may be the Mel in this situation. How much are they paying you to spew out that nonsense, Marceau? How did Melody even get in this? It sounds like you can't get the melody out of your system either, like in her song Nobody's Business. Back in scene, of course, Marceau suggests that Marquez is taking accountability for leaving, but not taking accountability for the consequences. Marquez restates his issue with Ken being in his house without them even having a conversation. Profoundly, Marceau says to start the conversation by thanking Ken for all that he has done for his kids because Ken picked up where he left off. I mean, Ken has taken the kids out of the country and even bought his son a car. Thanks are in order here, Marquez. And Marceau says that even though Ken approached Trisha as a married woman, he has done right by her and the kids, and that Marquez needs to be less prideful because Ken has been helpful to him. I just can't believe Marceau is making sense in this scene. What is happening? Am I dreaming? Did Dr. Phil write this script? Wait, it was Dr. Francis, wasn't it? Regardless, seeing Marceau delivering his pre-rehearsed, scripted lines with decent accuracy shocked me. But let's move on. In the third scene, we finally get to see Melody Cherie Rogers. When Nell Fletcher goes over for a visit, they greet one another, and Melody asks Nell how things are going at the daycare, and Nell mentions that they just completed an audit and are preparing for the kids to graduate. Also, it is a little sad for Nell to see the kids go off to other schools. Melody mentions that she got them lemonade because she didn't know if their conversation was going to be bitter or sweet, and Nell told her that the conversation is going to be bitter, because nothing about it was sweet. Nell tells Melody how all of the kids came over to the house and flipped on her by saying she needed therapy, when she just wanted to set boundaries. Nell even asked Melody what the hell did she need one-on-one counseling for. Melody asked her who all voted that she needed a therapist, and Nell admitted that it was everyone. This shocks Melody, and she asked Nell if it also included Chris Sr., and Nell admitted that he did as well. Nell said that it hurt her feelings because she knows how to take care of and provide for herself. She just can't keep providing for everyone else because it takes a toll on her finances. Nell said if she doesn't get her money returned, she's bothered, but according to her, she's not bothered to where she needs counseling. She just wants to set boundaries and be left alone. She knows that she doesn't have the best delivery, but when she's pissed off, she's pissed off. Nell says that she's probably said stuff to Melody when she was pissed off, and Melody says, yeah, you have. But as her friend, Melody tells Nell that sometimes her emotional thermometer is up. And apparently, this kept Nell from passing her physical because her blood pressure was raised. Melody tells her that she needs to learn how to control her emotions, and since Chris Sr. told Nell that the kids come to him because he's calmer, Melody thinks it's a good cop bad cop situation where Chris is the good cop, and Nell agrees. Melody also thinks that Nell just can't request for people to leave her alone because those are her kids, but she can work on a better way to handle things in ways that don't raise her blood pressure. She suggested Nell take one for the team and do the counseling. Who knows, she might actually love it, and it might even encourage the kids to do so. Melody also mentions how therapy has been frowned upon in the Black community and that other races have been doing therapy forever, and now Black people are finally seeing the benefits of therapy and life coaches. In her confessional, Melody says that hearing her friend Nell share her opposition when it comes to therapy may be due to Nell's generation, because Melody's generation is more open to therapy. For Nell, it might just be fear of the unknown. In scene, Melody reiterates that Nell should do therapy, and Nell says that she will do it. Melody also tells Nell to say hello to Dr. Francis for her. And that's the scene. It is highly important for our community to realize the benefits of therapy and not be stigmatized by the thought of reaching out for help. Sometimes prayers are answered with therapy. In the fourth scene, the Fletchers get ready for therapy. We meet Nell in the kitchen prepping drinks and telling Chris Sr. that he's the one that doesn't know how to set boundaries. Meanwhile, the kids, minus Lexi, get seated and wait for Dr. Francis to arrive. They discuss being scared and question whether or not everything is on the table. Nell is still in the kitchen telling Chris that she doesn't think he supports her, and he lets her know that they say the same thing. It's just that the way Nell says it is different from him, and Nell is saying that Chris is always making her out to be the bad person, and that she's good until his adult children start doing the most. Nell, do you hear yourself right now? This is not a good look, because those adult children can hear what you are saying right now. Luckily, Dr. Francis is at the door as we go into their joint confessional. Chris Sr. says that he wants Dr. Francis to help them set boundaries for their grown children, and Nell tells Chris that she's glad that he admitted that the kids are grown, and that they have tried to use reverse psychology on her with the counseling, and again says that she doesn't need counseling, only they do. In scene, Dr. Francis gets seated and Nell explains that they brought him there because they are trying to set boundaries, and that things don't work her way. She knows her personality is strong and thinks the kids do better when they hear from someone else. She continues by saying that she doesn't think the kids are listening to her, and at times, she doesn't think that Chris is listening to her either. She also thinks that Chris Sr. takes their side as well, and she always finds things out last. But she's the one who has to solve the problem. Dr. Francis told her that she spoke with deep passion. He also said that families are staples of society, and when you have a fractured family, you have a lot of pain. He then asks the kids if the boundaries being set are realistic, and they all agree. Dr. Francis then asks Chris Sr. if the boundaries set are mutual between him and Nell, to which Chris says that they are. He also asked the kids what the difference was between their dad listening and their mom listening. Lance answers by saying that when there's something that needs to be addressed, his dad is going to let him finish saying what he is saying, but his mom is only listening to rebuttal, and that drowns out what he is saying. And Dr. Francis asks what that interruption does to him, to which Lance says that it shuts him down, because it makes it seem as though what he has to say isn't as important as what his mom has to say. And Lance is actually concerned that he is about to piss Nell off right now by speaking his truth. Then, unsurprisingly, Nell cuts Lance off and starts speaking, which only proves the point he was just making. However, Nell tells Dr. Francis that most of the time, she's already told the kids, "I told you so why are we even here?" And Dr. Francis just starts laughing, but she continues to say that if the kids did what they are supposed to, they wouldn't have to call, and the kids are all just looking away. Nell also says that she's the one going out of her way whether they call Chris Sr. or not, because she is the one that has to make the decision on whether or not to help them. Dr. Francis interjects and says to the kids that Nell interrupts them to the point where they can't get everything out, so he wants to give the kids the opportunity to talk with their mom. Lance starts by saying that he does not want to create the narrative that Nell just doesn't listen. He says that Nell listens, but she listens to respond, and Nell gets combative with her "I told you so" narrative. Dr. Francis then realizes that the kids go to Chris Sr. to escape Nell's wrath, and Chris says pretty much. Dr. Francis also states that kids go to the parent that can satisfy the need that they have, and Nell once again gets combative, proving Lance's point. When Lance asks his mom if she understood Dr. Francis, she claims that she heard everything that he said. She also reiterates that the kids needed to see Dr. Francis and not her, and Chris Sr. seems to smile in disbelief. Also, the kids seem a little stunned as well. Dr. Francis notices that Nell has the capacity to listen when she wants to, and Kayla thinks that it is selective hearing. Nell then states that when they come to her, it's about money. However, Dr. Francis wants to focus on everyone's feelings, and not the money. He tells her essentially that when she pops off, the kids shut down emotionally. Kayla states that when she shuts down emotionally, the communication is dead at that point, and Dr. Francis asked Nell if she understood what Kayla said. Dr. Francis digs deeper and asked if it was more than the communication withering away, and if it was something inside them withering away, and he hit the nail on the head. Nell starts to get emotional, as if she finally understood. It was her aha moment. We go into their confessional where Chris says that that is what he has been trying to tell her. Her tough love isn't getting through with the kids. Nell then claims that she has been trying to tell Chris that, and that she's been trying to set the boundaries, so she agrees with him for once that tough love is not working. Back in scene, Dr. Francis says that for as much noise as Nell makes, she's delicate on the inside, and she's doing that to hide the fact that she is delicate. So he suggests that Nell give each kid a sentence or two about what she loves and admires about them. Nell tells her niece Kiki that she knows that she isn't her mom, but she loves her like her own. She tells Lance that it was the two of them against the world before anyone else came along, and that she hears him, but sometimes she just doesn't want to hear him, but she's going to do her best to listen to him more. She's proud of him for owning his own business, and she knows he's been through a lot and is aware of his pain. Nell tells Kayla that she hears her when she gets off of the phone silently, and she knows that she is a tough cookie. Lastly, she tells Chris Jr. that she is proud of him and that she knows he's on the right path. She says that she and God have him, and she needs him to get up and come out of his funk, and that she is going to be there for him. Dr. Francis tells them to continue to fertilize their children with love so that they can continue to grow, because cursing them out and putting them down isn't going to do anything. He hopes that he is leaving them with something to grow as individuals and as a family. Chris Sr. thanks Dr. Francis, and Nell gives him a long hug. What she said to him couldn't be heard or understood, other than her telling Dr. Francis that she's got it, and that ends the scene. Zodiacs, that was intense, and was exactly what Nell needed. I hope she uses the tools given to her and doesn't revert back to her old ways. However, I think that Nell and Chris Sr. need to focus more on enforcing the boundaries that they have set. There's no point in having boundaries if you continually let people cross them. In the final scene of the episode, we get Trisha meeting up with Marquez in a gazebo in what looks like a park, but I'm not sure. I swear that this scene had me calling Carlos King many names that I can't repeat in this video because I am really annoyed and turned off by him trying to normalize Trisha's extramarital affair. Not all people in the black community are either cheated on or the cheater, except for in this show. This could have been an opportunity to showcase strong black families and black excellence, but Carlos King opted for the mess and drama, and everyone that watches this show has to suffer along with it. But anyway, as Marquez is walking towards Trisha, we are taken into her confessional, where she states that she invited her husband there to talk about a formal divorce. She says that they haven't spoken in so long, and she's going to see if they can have an adult conversation without shouting and tears. I'm already shouting and crying, because their energy towards one another is so awkward, but oh well. Marquez says that they haven't spoken in a while, but he feels strongly about Ken, and that he doesn't have a lot of respect for Ken. He tells her that they will always be connected through family, no matter what. Trisha asks him why he doesn't have respect for Ken, and Marquez says it is because Ken has always been waiting in the wings. Well, I don't have respect for Trisha or Ken Marquez, so join the club. Trisha says that when she was dealing with her sister not wanting to do a heart transplant, she was going through a lot. And then she brings up losing her parents 6 months apart, and Marquez wasn't there for her the way she needed and wanted him to be. Back in her confessional, Trisha says that Marquez totally ignored everything that she was going through when she lost her parents and her sister. He was never at home and always with his friends, and didn't try to console her, nor did he pick up any slack, and it magnified the trauma that she was going through with him. In scene, she tells him that she knew he saw her shifting and drained, but he didn't do anything. And he admits to not being there for her. She goes on to say they outgrew each other and had different goals in life that they didn't communicate. And he says that now she's with Mr. Muscles. She fell in love with the gym, got new friends and got on Instagram. He talks about the chocolate emojis Ken left on her pictures and her telling him that Ken was just a friend, but he wants to know why Ken had her number as a married woman. She goes back into confessional to try to clean up the timeline with Ken by saying that this was years after their separation and that she and Ken were on a cordial level, and that Marquez is trying to make it seem like she and Ken were doing something that they weren't supposed to be doing, but that isn't the case. But I'm just not buying it. Why? Because what you're doing with Ken now is something that you aren't supposed to be doing until your divorce, so save it. She continues to say that Ken was her motivation in the gym. Marquez continues to say that when he got Ken's number and called him, that Ken told him to check his BITCH. But he used the word girl instead of BITCH with Marceau, so he's lying to one of them. They argue about why their daughter isn't talking to him, and finally decide that Marquez needs to sit down with Ken and his daughter. He tells Trisha how the school confused him with Ken, and Marquez says that he hates seeing Ken in his house, and his fears of another man taking care of his kids came true. He tells Trisha that he wants to have a man-to-man talk without emotion or masculinity with Ken. Now, Trisha says that Ken is a teddy bear until he is pushed, but it sounds like Marquez is afraid that Ken is going to put the paws on him. Marquez says he's going to go to the courthouse while he's in town to file for divorce, which is around $400, and he wants Trisha to pay half. In her confessional, she is offended and ticked off that she should have to pay for anything, so she's going to get Ken to pay for it, and Marquez just gets up and walks away, leaving Trisha sitting there looking silly, to end the episode. Are you kidding me with this BS? I'm tired of seeing Trisha and Ken on my screen. In fact, I'm tired of all of the supporting cast getting more screen time than the core six. What is this even about? Somebody needs to make it make sense. This concludes my recap and review of the episode. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. And why not go ahead and support the channel by subscribing so that you never miss an episode of the Aries Girl podcast. I will see you on the next video. Until then, take care.